Hello, and welcome to Horror Movies and Shit. I'm your host, Jim, and with me as always is...
Bork.
Bork. I really like that name for you now.
I know. Robert, Jim had some sort of transcription thing done on like one of our podcasts, and whenever I said Mark, I thought I said Bork.
Yes, it's great, and now that's what we're going to call Mark forever and in perpetuity.
I've been called way worse, so...
You have. Hey, Mark, do you want to introduce Robert to our audience?
Go ahead.
Do you want to introduce Robert to our audience?
We have Robert Holt on our podcast. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We threw out just like our normal, hey, who wants to come on, just have some fun, just chat about horror movies, and Robert, you were nice enough to not only volunteer, but give us like a long list of great topics, which we'll, just depending on how long we talk and ramble about stuff, we'll see. Through. But do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I believe you're an author. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I have a couple books out there. Like I was telling Jim before we started here, it's a hobby that pays for itself. So that's how I like to think of it, and I'm happy with where my writing career is right now. With that being said, I haven't had a book out in about 6 years, but the last book I wrote was actually a horror comedy about the Trump administration right after he won in 2016.
Okay, can I have the name of that book, please?
Yes, it is. There Are No Zombies in America.
I will be looking that up as soon as we get done today.
It's kind of a fun book because it's about a pandemic that breaks out around the world, everywhere except in America. But it's to the point where you don't know if it's fake news or not.
Oh, okay.
Jim is fully into MAGA, so I don't know.
Am I though, Mark?
You want to make America great again, Jim? Why do you hate America so much? You call me the smartest.
Well, I mean, I got to be something, right?
They indicted me, and I did nothing wrong.
Mark, that's the wrong podcast for that, sir. That impression, sir. We have a politics podcast for that, sir. So, Robert, if you ever want to go on that one, also, we have,
I might be up for that. But yeah, you guys better be careful. You're in Florida, right?
We are.
Oof.
As long as we're not talking about this shit stain, we're good.
I don't dare to say gay.
I say it and I live it every day, sir.
What, you're gay, Jim?
What? No. Not me. My husband is.
Florida.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen Borat?
I have.
He's after going to like the Pride rally thing. He's like, the man that tried to shove the rubber fist up my anus was gay. I love Borat. I think it's hilarious. Anyway. Okay, you don't have taste. Anyway, Robert, you brought up an interesting topic. I believe you wrote some sort of thesis or...
Yeah, Hellraiser was kind of my go-to. Anytime I had a big paper to write, it was always on Hellraiser.
So before I forget, and we can talk about Hellraiser, I was just thinking about this because not many people kind of bring this up. Now, From Beyond came out a year earlier. Have you seen From Beyond?
I have. It's been a long time, but I have.
if you look at that movie and you look at Hellraiser, they are super similar in a lot of concepts. You got the S&M stuff. You got the beings from another side. It's just real interesting. So I just wanted to bring that up before we forget.
Yeah.
So essentially, before we start talking, Mark just wants to let you know that your entire thesis or whatever paper you've ever written on Hellraiser is actually about From Beyond.
Gotcha.
And you didn't even know it. That's how much you are.
Okay. Anyway.
So yeah, Hellraiser. It's my favorite horror movie. It ranks right up there with Curse of the Demon.
I don't know that one.
Oh, it's a great one. It's a 1958, I think.
Is it Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon?
Well, it's both.
Right.
In America, it was released as Curse of the Demon. In England, it was released as Night of the Demon.
Right. So I'm from the UK originally, so that's
Gotcha. So you.
Jim, have you seen Drag Me to Hell, the Sam Raimi movie?
Of course I have.
Yeah. So Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon, they kind of lifted the lore from that movie for Drag Me to Hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I've made a note.
Both based on the same short story. I forget.
Casting the runes.
Yeah, by M.R. James.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to Hellraiser. We keep bouncing off, but it's my favorite. It's my favorite horror movie, and in its most basic essence, it's a haunted house movie. It has all the themes of a haunted house. You know, it's the place that's evil. It's the actual location is where Frank died is what brings him back. You know, it's the blood on the floor. And I just think that's so interesting because when you really get down to it, it's nothing like any other haunted house movies. It's its complete own, its own mythology breaks off from there, you know?
I think especially, Clive Barker, he's like, I wrote the script for Rawhead Rex, but that movie didn't turn out so great. Although I really like Rawhead Rex for what it is.
And how can you not like Rawhead Rex? I mean, with the baptism scene.
I saw it in Blu-ray recently, and I hadn't watched it in maybe 10, 15 years. And I'm like, wow, this is actually, it holds up pretty well because I remember liking it. But halfway through, the main spoiler for Rawhead Rex from 1981. But the main protagonist's son gets killed, and he kind of gets over it super quick.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. But I think what certainly that setting does help this movie, right? Because it's a low budget.
Yeah.
Very few locations, mainly upstairs and downstairs, and like a restaurant and a doctor's office or a hospital, and that's it.
Well, we do have the few outdoor shots also, where,
right?
Kirsty's walking back to the house.
But and these are very, very, they're not like huge rooms with a lot of things, right? These are just very simple, like you could shoot it in your own house almost.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of it.
One interesting thing that I noticed just in my last watch, which was this week, because I was like, oh, if I'm going to be on this, I need to watch the movie one last time, any excuse really.
Right.
But it was my first time really watching it on Blu-ray with, the full high def, and just realized how shitty that house was. Mm-hmm. It didn't look nearly that bad on VHS.
Like whenever they first come in, it is so fucking gross.
Yeah, but it never got better. I mean, there's black mold in every room. It's like, what are they doing there?
Maybe it's all a hallucination from the black mold.
It could be.
Yeah,
kind of gives it a whole new twist,
right?
Robert, did you include that in any of your writings?
I did not. I did
not.
My
God.
I feel a new thesis coming on. Environmental contaminants lead to mass hallucination.
The lead character watched From Beyond from a year before. The black mold, and this is his fever dream. So, you're talking about 87, right? So it's quite late in the cycle of 80s horror movies, which you got the Freddys and the Jasons, Michael Myers, the big slashers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this movie took definitely a much more mature look at horror. And it's not so much even the horror of the Cenobites. It's the horror of the relationship, right? Between
Frank and Julia, yeah,
Right.
and this sort of abusive, but she's a willing participant in it too, which makes it very grounded, right? So even though you have all these like gateways to hell, and there is, it's almost like a Lifetime movie, based on a real life murder, right? So, which I think it does a real good job balancing those two aspects. Because really the greatest, the most kind of pain-inducing parts aren't people being ripped apart by chains. It's like Julia hitting people over the head with a hammer.
Yeah, no, the people getting ripped off by chains, those are the feel-good moments.
I don't know. I took something completely different away from it because it was the sexual nature of everybody in the film. It was insanely sexual at its core when I watched it as an adult. As a kid, I didn't see any of that. It was all about the chains and the body horror and people getting ripped apart. But watching it as an adult, the fact that Frank is essentially taunting his niece with wanting to fuck her, and the way that Julia is all over him when he still has no skin, and she's completely obsessed with him through most of the movie. It's insane to me to watch as an adult and recognize all those themes.
That is an excellent cue into one of my first thesis statements on this movie.
Okay.
Which was that the Cenobites are actually a representation of Clive Barker's homosexuality.
Interesting. I'd like to hear this.
Yeah, so they're not the bad guys. I mean, that's
right.
That's important to notice.
Yes,
because Clive Barker wouldn't do that. But they are the explorers in the furthest. Oh, hold on. They are the explorers in the furthest regions of experience. Angels to some, demons to others. They are just that. They are explorers in experience.
So what I loved about the first the first four movies mostly is that the Cenobites are amoral, right?
Right.
They're not, in subsequent sequels where they, had other scripts and then just wrote in Pinhead to keep the rights. Hellraiser. They all of a sudden, like Pinhead's like, oh, you cheated on your wife, so now this is the hell you get, and all that. Like, you don't get that in the first movie.
No.
Like, they're not sitting there being some sort of moral judge.
Right.
Which I liked.
You open the box, they come.
Exactly. Right.
They're there.
Yeah.
You summoned me, here we are, let's go.
Yeah. And it's not even about punishment. It's about giving you what they offer.
Right.
Which is pleasure and pain.
Mm-hmm.
You decide which it is. Right.
That would be a pain for me.
Frank didn't look like he altogether disliked it that final round.
No, 100%. Right. He did enjoy pushing the boundaries, and that's what his experience was about.
And of course, the title that they had prior to it was Sadomasochist from Hell, right? So,
right, and I think all of that plays into the Cenobites are the counter to the heterosexual relationship of Frank and Julia.
Well, and I do understand that too, because back in the early 70s and the late 60s, early 70s, BDSM was huge in the gay community. So a lot of that, you can see that a lot of in the clothing and the torture implements and the torture devices they come up with. You can see a lot of that referenced in the different imagery, especially in the movie.
You can even see that in like heavy metal, right? So Rob Halford from Judas Priest, gay, and he wore a lot of the leather, the 70s, 80s gay stuff, and it just kind of took, the rest of the metal scene, and we're like, okay, that's pretty cool. We'll wear that too.
Right.
You don't realize it, but you're wearing gay.
Yeah, speaking of heavy metal, another movie that I think kind of crosses into the same kind of theme is Strangeland with
Dee
what's his name?
Snider.
Dee Snider.
Yeah, Dee Snider. Yeah,
I've never watched that from start to finish.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
I have an intense distaste for Dee Snider.
why?
It was mostly for the shit he pulled on his radio show when I was living in Connecticut. He tried to be a Howard Stern wannabe, and it just didn't go over well for me.
Yeah, I could see that. But I think there was also a strange turning point in Clive Barker's career when he did kind of come out of the closet.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of expelled those demons, and his stuff stopped being so graphic. It stopped being so harsh.
He went into the epic fantasy.
It kind of lost its hardcore edge. I think he found happiness and lost some of those inner demons.
Yeah, I can see that. And believe it or not, I am more of a fan of his epic fantasy and his darker fantasy stuff than I am of his horror writing.
I can certainly see how people can be.
I'm not. Jim likes more fantasy stuff than I like.
I mean, Books of Blood, don't get me wrong, Books of Blood and The Great and Secret Show, two of my favorite books. Well, Books of Blood, my favorite book series, Great and Secret Show, two of the best ever, but I prefer like Imagica and Weave World to most of his other horror stuff.
Yeah, it's like my absolute favorite book is probably Damnation Game.
Yeah. I have that in my Audible library. I haven't listened to it yet.
It's so good. And in fact, my first novel I think was Death's Disciples, heavily influenced by Damnation Game.
Oh wait, that's the one about the detective in New York, right?
No.
Oh,
that's the World War II one, right? Where there's a gambler. Is it not?
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha. So yeah, I have not heard that one yet. Okay, understood.
Highly recommend it.
And if you're talking about like kind of more overt, like homosexual type writing, I mean, I think even Nightbreed is more in your face about it.
You think?
Because the monsters are seen as the outsiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're shunned by society, but they're not actual monsters. The real monsters in that movie book are the regular people. Right?
But let me ask you something, Mark, about that on that term.
Mm-hmm.
Do you attribute the homosexual aspect of that to them, or interpret that because you know Clive Barker is gay? Like if he had some other stigma attached to him, be it a learning disability or whatever, would you have attached that instead?
I mean, I think it's just my thought process, and you're probably right. I mean, people read a lot into stuff, and they put a lot of their own stuff. There's a lot of hindsight, right, that goes into it. I mean, if you're looking at that, I'm just trying to think if there's another kind of analog in society. I mean, obviously the trans stuff, but where somebody can't be who they want to be without fear of attack or it being detrimental to their life in general, other than kind of gay, trans, maybe religious belief, because you don't know what people believe religiously unless they tell it to you. Right. And even political, I guess. So it's just kind of like whatever's in yourself. If you're not part of the overall group and you're a minority for whatever reason, I think that certainly there's most of the violence and stuff within society, going back since humans were humans, it's been tribal, right? And it's the in-tribe, out-tribe. Mm-hmm. And so just a thought.
I think in Hellbound Heart, the source material for Hellraiser, that it's a little bit more apparent that it is that the Cenobites do represent, if not homosexuality, at least alternative sexuality,
Right.
Where you don't know if any of them are male or female.
Right.
You can't tell, and it makes a point in that, which is why a lot of people thought, a female Pinhead made sense, and I don't disagree with that.
and the comic book does actually, the comic book series that was written does actually take Kirsty and turn her into the new Hell Priest. So I think that's what a lot of people were really rooting for with the new reboot.
Well, I think what's even more interesting in that newest Hellraiser movie, which I don't think was entirely successful, but
I agree.
It's not only a female Pinhead, but we know it's a transgender,
right?
Which I think adds an extra layer on. And again, you can sit there and like go over this and think about this, but I really think her performance is fantastic. I don't even have to think about transgender or being transgressive or following in the footsteps of Barker's kind of asexual Cenobites, right? And this is almost that embodied, right, with a transgender woman. So
I would absolutely love to see that actress play that role in a better film.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think she was great, but the rest of the movie falls so flat and is so obnoxious that it detracts from her performance.
I think the character writing was the most problematic.
I agree.
The lead girl in it was just very unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
The interactions between them just seemed weird, and but there was certain parts of that movie where I'm like, okay, I think that's a really good visual, or that's a really good scene.
Oh yeah, there were some visuals that were great. Yeah, I agree.
But I think at the end of the day, it was a bit of a damp squib.
Yeah. Well, one thing I actually really enjoyed about it was they didn't overdo the Cenobites. I was so scared they were going to. I was so scared they were going to make them the major focus of the movie, and the Cenobites never should be.
Right. Agreed.
Only in episode 3 was Pinhead like the major focus of the movie, and in my opinion, it was one of the worst.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Hellraiser gone Hollywood.
Right. It was. Yeah. It turned it into a slasher film.
They were trying to turn him into Freddy.
Right.
And it certainly beat Hellworld, where they turned it into some video game thing. But it was.
which was Henry Cavill's introduction to horror movies. Yeah. So it's not all bad, right?
No, and it allowed what's his name to be killed by a Cenobite with Henrix, the guy who's been killed by an alien. Lance Henriksen, been killed by an alien, Predator, and Terminator, and a Cenobite now.
Right.
let me just say, myself and Jim go to a convention, and there's one coming up here in October. So as far as Hellraiser people, so I've met Clyde Barker, Nicholas Vince, Ashley Lawrence, Barbie Wilde, and who else? Oh, Doug Bradley, of course. But this coming convention, they're bringing what's the actress's name that plays Julia?
Oh God! Oh yes, yeah. Damn it.
Her, Andrew Robinson, and Chatterer. Oh, God. Who played the Chatterer? And it was because I said you should go back.
Right, you said you were going to bring him on the podcast, right?
No. I said you would have to buy me a beer because...
It's Claire Higgins, by the way, played Julie.
Claire Higgins. So... I've been super lucky to meet all these people, and
that's great. Yeah,
they've all been, obviously awesomely nice. I'm looking up his.
Yeah, I only ever had one negative experience at Spooky with it, meeting a celebrity.
Simon Bamford. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Nice.
So anyway, Robert, back onto your Hellraiser thesis.
Yes. So I wrote one about one of my papers. It was a 10-page paper about how they represent kind of Clive Barker's homosexuality and kind of what that means for him and his entire career.
Right.
But the one that it was, I think it was a 25-page paper I wrote on just the mythological motifs in the first Hellraiser movie.
Okay.
And there are so many. To the point where if people like to talk about Star Wars and how it's like the most archetypal image of the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell's hero with 1,000 faces, I'd actually say that Kirsty's journey in Hellraiser is a better example. The only thing it's missing is she doesn't have that guide, the Obi-Wan Kenobi character,
Right.
Clive Barker never introduced a character like that for her.
Well, almost in a way that makes her a stronger character.
So let me ask you this.
But,
sorry, go ahead.
But
I was going to say it does, but it takes away some of the growth potential of her. She almost it seems like she's just fumbling through it.
But in the second movie, does she not become that character for the
she does.
the blonde girl? Yeah.
Tiffany,
thank you.
Now, I will say part 2 is my favorite of the series.
Part 2 is great, and I certainly can see that. But to me, part 1 was art. It's kind of like
I agree.
I think Exorcist 3 was a more fun watch than Exorcist 1, and I like Exorcist 3 more.
Yeah.
But Exorcist 1, that was art.
Funny enough, I watched Exorcist 2: The Heretic today.
Oh, it's great.
I appreciate it more now than I did when I originally watched it, if I'm being honest. Like it's fantastic in how terrible it is.
Yes.
And the amount of plot holes and the ridiculousness. It's fantastic.
It's just never boring. There's always something screaming, yelling, something cringe going on, something like, what the fuck are you doing? What is this? What's going on? It's just a real, but in terms of actual movie quality, obviously The Exorcist 1 is a classic. Exorcist 2 is garbage, but it's entertaining garbage.
Yep.
And I agree with you, Robert. I actually like part 3 the most.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I view Hellraiser 1 and 2 as well. I think Hellraiser 2 is almost a more fun watch.
It is mostly the. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I kind of look at Hellraiser 1 and I was looking or thinking about some of my favorite movies, and a lot of them are sequels, which is weird. Like I use Alien. Like I love Alien; it's a classic, but I prefer Aliens. I would rewatch Aliens more than I would watch Alien.
But there's a reason for that.
Is a more, it's Ridley Scott, cinematography great, acting great, but Aliens I just think is just a more fun ride.
But there's a reason for that. There's a solid reason for that, because in a sequel, if it's done right, you spend less time world building and more time on the story.
Yep. I like bigger.
Right.
And what
Mark's a size queen.
So we talked about the small settings and a very few characters in the first one. The second one, much bigger setting, not a huge amount of additional characters, but I just love the more. The first one seems very close, and again, it's very about Julia and Frank and her just killing individuals, whereas the second one just goes like balls to the wall, right? It's just we're going to hell and we're going to do this crazy shit.
You can almost see that the entire first movie is almost a movie about obsession from Julia's point of view. She is so obsessed with what she had with Frank that she's willing to do whatever she has to recapture that.
And let me tell you, Claire Higgins in the first one is really good. Yep. But I absolutely love her performance in part 2.
She's fantastic as a villain.
Agreed.
Kills everything.
Yeah, she's fantastic as a villain.
And they were supposed to be setting her up to take over from Pinhead, right? But she refused to appear.
Yeah, well, I mean, she is the villain. She is the absolute villain in the first two movies.
Well, Frank's the villain in the first one, I would say.
Frank's the one drinking the blood, but she's the one killing the guys.
Right.
He's the one that's kind of got Stockholm syndrome, right?
He's the manipulator. She is the person that's acting it out, right?
So, right. But in part two, and I love the scene whenever she meets Frank again. And he's all like, get over here, because he still thinks he has that power over her.
Yep.
But, you talk about character arcs. Now, the tables have turned, and she rips his heart out. I mean, think about what that means.
But that's because in the first movie, you see her fighting with herself as she's committing these vile acts just for the sake of that one man. And then in the second movie, she's now fully come to terms with who she is and what she's done, and she's just loving it.
I disagree. I think in the first one, you see her being hesitant, kind of like Chenard in the second one, with the first kill. After that, she becomes kind of robotic about it, and she's just like, "This is who I am now."
Well, but that's a coping mechanism.
I know,
it's called compartmentalization.
Frank fucking kills her. It's nothing personal, babe. Right.
Right.
So that's another betrayal. It's not like he stabbed her accidentally. Well, he was trying to get Kirsty, but he could have been, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but he wasn't. He was just like, fuck you.
Right.
And
you talk about Chenard's hesitancy, and it just brings up my favorite line of the second one, which is right when he comes out of becoming a Cenobite.
Right.
It's like, to think I hesitated.
And I love Kenneth Branagh's performance in that too. I really do. It's weird growing up in the UK. I remember my parents watching a TV show called Shine on Harvey Moon with Kenneth Branagh as the lead in it. And it was just a regular a drama series or whatever. Then the next time I see him, he's being a fucking boss. You know what I love? It's almost like I'm talking more about Hellraiser too, but I love the part where Pinhead, whatever, and Kirsty's like, "Oh, you're all human ones." I remember, and then Chenard comes in, and he's good, a fight. And, I maybe want to get your opinions about this. A lot of people seem confused about that scene. But my take on that is it's like a changing of the guard. Mm-hmm. Right? Leviathan has picked Chenard to be the next kind of ruler of hell. And he's in there just getting rid of the old.
Yeah. That's pretty much how I see it. And part of it, I think, also is that the Cenobites are weakened by what Christie has just told them. They're in a weakened state, finding out that they were human.
Right, because they've been at it so long that they forgot that part of themselves. And Chenard, at this point, knows he was human and doesn't give a shit. He wants to embrace his new side. So that makes him a stronger, less fallible character.
And again, I love to overanalyze stuff.
Well, right. But one thing I want to point out, all the stuff I was talking about Pinhead being, or the Cenobites being a representation of homosexuality, that all goes out the window in part two.
Yeah, that's true.
that Clive Barker's not involved, and none of that's really. I think he got a thumbs up on the script, but that's about it. I think it was. So none of that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
You can almost see it's like an Adam and Eve story in part two.
Very much so, and that goes right back to the mythological motifs I talked about, where the box is a representation of either Pandora's box or the fruit of knowledge, and it is you were opening it up and releasing all the evil, or opening it up and releasing all the knowledge, all the experience. and that is very much one of the mythological motifs that is in the movie.
Talking about mythological stuff, did you read the Scarlet Gospels?
I did.
So this is I was so looking forward to that book because I'm like, okay, awesome. Barker's coming back to horror, plus he's coming back to Hellraiser. I really enjoyed the first few chapters in it, but I ended up pretty much hating it. Mostly because it was all this Christian religion stuff, and it's like actual Christian hell. I thought that's a very weird way to take it. It almost felt like kind of fan fiction, and I was a little disappointed because again I love the amoral Cenobites, right? They're not moral judges, and there's no God and there's no devil. It's just an experience, right? There's this otherworldly thing where a door opens, you go in there, and that's what happens. So yeah, I was disappointed by that. Jim, did you read that?
You're gonna have to repeat that for me, Mark. I tune out when you talk. It's just too much for me.
I'm sorry, Robert. Jim, yeah. Have you ever heard of this guy called Clive Barker?
Never in my life.
Okay, so he wrote this book called The Scarlet Gospels.
What is that about?
Have you ever read that?
I don't think so.
It says return to the pinhead.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'm giving Mark shit.
Okay.
He's giving me shit by looking like an idiot. Good job.
I know. I'm great at it, aren't I?
Yeah, you are an expert in that.
I am.
Yeah.
But yes, I have actually listened, I've listened to parts of the audiobook. I haven't listened to it completely yet.
Yeah.
It didn't work for me. And I think I can point out exactly why it didn't work for me. Okay. The most important thing I think for horror for me is the unknown. That's what scares me the most. So anytime you actually explain what is going on, you have destroyed my suspension of disbelief, and I just call bullshit on it, and I spend the rest of the movie just calling bullshit, or book. And for that book, he explains everything to minute detail, and it just doesn't work. I just sit there and go, really? This is all Christian mythology? Yeah, I'm not buying this.
That was the part that ruined it for me. But I mean, I kind of get where you're coming from with the unknown stuff. I mean, we can go back to Lovecraft again, From Beyond. Everything goes back to From Beyond. But I also think, depending on the book or the movie, sometimes more is better, right? So I can't
think of an instance of that.
The Thing.
Like what?
The Thing.
How is more better?
You still don't know really what's going on with the Thing.
It's
an alien.
It's not hinted at. It's all on screen. You see the practical effects. You see everything that's going on. The only unknown is the paranoia of who might be it. But whenever it comes out, you see it.
Well, but okay, so I guess I'm thinking about it a little bit differently, right? Because I'm not thinking about the transition, any of the body horror from the Thing. I'm thinking about where did it come from?
Yeah, that's kind of.
I don't need to know any of that. That's just like the xenomorphs. We just talked about that, Mark, the other day when we talked about the xenomorph thing. When they tried to explain it in Covenant is when they ruined that perfect killing machine.
Totally.
I think there's a difference between explain. So I love the Predator, right? Where what happens on the Predator's planet, I don't really care. I know what the Predator is by what he does.
Right.
And it's an awesome movie. So it doesn't have to be well, you could say the same about Michael Myers, right?
Right.
That's probably
right. As soon as you got the curse of Michael Myers, it was terrible. As soon as they explained why he comes every, it's the spirit of the moon or whatever. It was like, what? I don't even know what the hell I'm watching right now.
Right.
And I tuned out, and it ruined the movie for me. It just became a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah. So I think there's certain aspects of, or there's certain books or movies where if we know where it comes from, it can still be effective. But I think that there's also, we could talk about Hellraiser, right? We have no idea in that movie where they're from or what they're doing.
Right.
No, nothing is explained, and that's what keeps the true horror of it alive.
Right.
I mean, even in Hellraiser 2, when they're going through hell, you're looking at it going, I still don't know how any of this works. So is Leviathan the devil? Is it something else? I don't understand. I still don't know.
Why is it changing shape? Like, what's
Right.
But I think that's kind of the changing of the guard thing. I mean, I'll give you an example of, maybe the strong arguments about the unknown. So, like, John Carpenter's Halloween, the whole thing about that movie is that Michael Myers was just this normal little kid, and now he's a fucking savage killer, right? And no explanation. And, that might be budgetary reasons or just simplicity of writing. We don't have to explain it. But then we get like Rob Zombie's Halloween. And there's some great gore and stuff in that, and that's fine. I think the movie's absolute garbage. And I think one of the biggest issues is they tried to humanize Michael Myers at the start, doing this, checkbox of what's a serial killer? Oh, look, he's bullied. He's got this thing. He kills a small animal. He tortures it. Da, 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 da. So you're doing all this humanizing, right? Oh, this is how a normal human may become like a psychotic killer, right? If we're just looking at, very, very kind of bland stuff, but just that checkbox. But then they make him into this 8 foot tall, like been working out like fucking crazy every day, teleporting, almost supernatural person. Like, you need to pick one or the other. If you're going to humanize him and make him have all these traits, don't make him this all of a sudden totally supernatural killer. Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do there.
So, Mark, you and I disagree on what exactly the worst parts of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies are. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Sherry is the
best. Sherry Moon is the downfall of any Rob Zombie flick.
Shut your whore mouth, Jim. Best actress ever.
Uh-huh.
Anyway.
I'm not a fan of Sherry Moon, but I wouldn't say
it's like a running joke I have online.
I get it.
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of a running joke.
I do not like her at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a running joke for the entire horror community, I think.
Yeah.
Robert, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about Hellraiser, or did you want to just kind of quickly, give our opinions about like the series in general? Like, hey, what do you think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I won't rank them, but because I will think well.
Yeah, we can run through all of it. But one thing I'd really like to point out, though, is I'd like to go back to the hero's journey just for a minute and just talk about that just a little. So, generally, the hero's journey is they come along. First of all, almost always the mother is dead at the beginning, and the father goes missing. And the hero journeys into hell or the underworld or Hades or whatever to try to find them. Then they are confronted with the devil or the underlord or whatever, and they have to make a deal with them. And from then, they come back and they try to free their father. And that it's like, I feel like just in explaining that, I've given away the entire plot of Hellraiser.
Pretty much. Because that is who she's fighting for. She's fighting to save her dad.
Almost even more so in part 2, because what she does is go to hell to save him. Yeah. Right? Risking everything, like eternal torture as far as she knows.
But at that point, she's the guide.
Even him.
But at that point, she's the guide because Tiffany's already opened the box. So
Tiffany,
is 2 really about Tiffany's?
no,
Tiffany exploring the hero's journey, or is it?
no.
I think it's still Kirsty.
Yeah, Tiffany's a side character. She's the C-3PO, or sorry, more like R2-D2.
I will say that visually, when Julia's skin fell off and it was Kirsty, that was probably the most satisfying scene in that entire movie for me.
Yeah, whenever I first watched it, whenever I was younger, that totally got me.
Yeah,
like I was I was like, oh, how is she back and why is she saving Tiffany? And then she's like, trust me. I'm like, no, don't trust her.
right.
Yeah, but younger eyes, younger brain.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think again, Hellraiser to me it's a 10 out of 10. I think it's iconic. I think it's transgressive. I think for the budget, it is beautifully shot. And can we just talk about Christopher Young for a little minute? That soundtrack, and especially for part 2, is one of the best horror movie soundtracks out there.
I don't disagree.
I agree. Just that chiming bell.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as you hear it, you just know. It's like,
yep.
And of course,
it's that blue light and that chiming bell. You know exactly what's coming.
If I just woke up one morning and heard that bell, I'd be like, "Oh shit!"
Yep.
And of course, Barker had initially tried out some electronica type soundtracks for it, but thankfully,
It would have been just forever classified as an '80s movie. Then it wouldn't be the.
There's the synth. The synth would have killed it.
Yeah.
So, Robert, Jim, what are your let's just give ratings as we go through.
Yeah,
So,
I think the first 2 were both 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree.
That they were masterpieces, in my opinion.
Part 3.
That's a 5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, 5 might be generous, but
yeah, Mark will tell you that's incredibly generous for me.
Oh, that's like a 20 out of 10 for most people.
I think I'd probably go 4 out of 10.
I'm going to go 6, and this one's always it's almost equal good and bad things about it because the new Cenobites are lame. Oh my god, it's so stuck there. You got CD head and camera head guy. But what I do like is it does give Doug Bradley some room to breathe. And even though it's kind of, they're trying to do the Freddy Krueger thing, I still think his performance is just great.
Do you know what Hellraiser 3 was? It was giving the fans what they thought they wanted, which is just a whole bunch of Pinhead just running wild.
So here,
so all you're missing is Pinhead.
Right, but what I think of, I'm a big fan of Peter Atkins too, who wrote it. But I think it's Hellraiser 1, this real low budget. Hellraiser 2, basically low budget. I mean, these were more, VHS hits than movies. But I think the word got around enough to the general layperson out there that, hey, here's a new horror franchise. And I think they saw this as a way of kind of elevating it and saying, hey, look at how flashy it is. And because it's visually, looks much more expensive and it's a lot more accessible than part 2. And definitely more than part 1, just because it's more that Hollywood feel around it. And it's only one I think I watched in the movie theaters. I was too young for the first 2, I think, to watch it. But I did get to see 3, and I love the opening. The opening, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be great. And then by the end, I'm like, that's a bit of a shame.
They kind of turned Pinhead into Freddy Krueger.
Yeah,
It was that's kind of how I view it. It was a Freddy Krueger version of Pinhead.
but I still think the lines that they gave him were much better than like the Freddy Krueger quips, right? I still think they had some gravitas behind them, and maybe some of that's the performance too.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
Doug Bradley did amazing in it, and it's hard for me to bash the movie too hard just because it does have that aspect to it. But ultimately, it was a slasher film.
Yeah.
And slasher films, I don't know if I could give a slasher film more than a 4-star.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, that hurts. That hurts because
Like
slashers are some of my favorites.
Well, I guess the first Halloween I would, but that's a slasher film with absolutely hardly. What is there like just like the blood on the knife at the beginning, and that's the only time you see blood in the entire movie.
Right.
Again, you have to keep on going back to the soundbites that they made because the girl that was like, "Oh, and now I've got a cigarette in my neck," and I stub my cigarette, and people like,
it was terrible.
like, really, that's your superpower as a Cenobite, you stub, and the guy with the piston through his head, I don't know, just hits people like, okay.
So I'm not gonna lie. This is about after 3 is pretty much where I fell off the series. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
The rest of it, yeah. Until we get to Judgment, or not Judgment, Hellseeker. So shall we move on to Halloween? Hellraiser 4.
Yes. So Robert, Halloween or Hellraiser. It's like whenever I said the other episode, a 6-month-year-old.
Yeah, 6-month-year-old.
Okay, so Hellraiser 4.
Bloodlines. The one where he goes into space.
And this was, I've seen parts of it, but as soon as they went into space, I was like, I can't do this.
I think this is a wonderful failure. I really dig Bloodline.
It wasn't bad. It gets a lot of crap just because it does do the space thing.
Right.
But ultimately, the story wasn't bad. Where I think its failure wasn't in space, it was in the fact that they tried to explain things. They tried to tell the history of the box, why the box was made. They tried to tell, how it all works. And I instantly was like, yeah, that sounds like bullshit. I'm not buying that.
We should also mention this is an Alan Smithy movie, right? So Kevin Yeager, I think, was the director, and he took his name off it because of the studio edits. I read the original screenplay that Peter Atkins released, and it's not too far away from the movie. There are some definite changes in it. I really, really like the opening, even though it, the magic thing and the box thing was like a little, okay, similar to you, Robert. I don't need that explained. I kind of, but I like that period piece, and I love Angelique. I would like Chenard and Angelique. I wish those were two characters that came back in other movies because I love those characters.
I agree.
The middle section of the movie, the present day one, my major problem with that is that what they did with Pinhead was make him like a kidnapper, and they, they shot him in like daylight, or and it just doesn't look very good. The end part, in space, it kind of makes. I kind of like hey, we're going from the 17th century into 21st or 22nd century or whatever. And I like kind of that loop of we've gone from simple toy box maker to, all of a sudden this satellite, the technology difference and everything.
Sure. And the in space part worked for me. The explanation of it all didn't, but the in space stuff did. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief to think in the future we can have that.
Right.
But to think that that's how the box works, yeah, no, it lost me.
But they didn't even really explain it very well either, right? It's just like, oh, there's this count, and he knows like black magic, and then the box and whatever. I'm like, I don't really understand that concept because I'm thinking about like Leviathan and everything in the background from part 2. I'm like, what? I don't really understand. And but whatever. So I will give part 4 a 6 out of 10 too, because I think 3 and 4 both have good aspects to them, but they're both kind of disappointing.
I would give it a 6. It was good fun. It brought back the feel of Hellraiser after part 3.
Right.
I will say I've never seen Bloodlines from beginning to end. The parts that I have seen, I'd probably rate a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, you talked about how Hellraiser 3 was the only one you saw in the theater. I saw Hellraiser 3 in the theater as well, but I saw Hellraiser 4 in the theater probably about 6 times.
Wow. Yeah. I don't think it was released near me.
I worked at the theater at the time, so it was like every day at the end of my shift, go watch Hellraiser for the week that it was there.
I can see that.
That's how I felt about
it in the big screen.
That's how I felt about the new Nightmare. I saw it the 1 week it was in theaters.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I love that movie.
Hellraiser 5 Inferno.
Never saw it.
I honestly, I saw it when it first came out. I can't really even put my finger on which one that is. They've all kind of amalgamated in my brain after Bloodlines.
So when I first watched 5, I didn't like it. On rewatch, I looked at it a little differently. I didn't look at it as a Hellraiser movie because it wasn't written as a Hellraiser movie. Right? This is when they started.
Almost all of them after that.
Flush scripts or whatever they call them, and just start shoehorning in. And this is the first one where Pinhead is this moral judge. I don't like that aspect, but. Pinhead's not in it very much.
Right.
And really what it is, it's kind of an interesting horror noir. It's like a hard-boiled, crooked detective who is played by the guy that played Boone in Nightmare.
Yes.
And
Craig. I was almost there.
Right?
Craig, God.
Let's just keep saying Craig.
Craig. But what's so amazing about this movie is he is perhaps
Craig Schaefer.
That's
it.
Yes, that's what I just said, Jim.
Yes.
After you said it. So he is the most unlikable protagonist in the movie. And I kind of dig it for that too. He is the skeeviest, most like bent cop. Like he's just awful. And they try to make it like at the end where we're supposed to feel pity for him. No, but still, never mind that. It's a really good like detective-y, again noir sort of movie. Directed by Scott Derrickson, who obviously went on to like Sinister and Doctor Strange and all that.
What I remember about this movie is that I didn't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all I can remember about it. I remember thinking, it kind of goes back to Pinhead not being the villain, really.
Right.
And it being a minor character, which is what he was in the first two. He an important character, but a minor character. And yeah, I remember. Like I said, I haven't seen it since it came out, but I remember thinking that was a solid movie.
Yeah, it's worth a rewatch because if you just look at it again through the lens of it's not a Hellraiser movie, it's like this weird horror noir, you might get a little bit more out of it from first watch because I did. So my rating,
Wait. Let me guess. 6 out of 10.
5.5. No,
Oh.
maybe no 6. No, it is a 6. You're right, Jim.
Okay.
Um,
Mine was probably about. I remember thinking it was probably about a 5.5, but this is based off old memories.
and things are probably going to be going downhill soon for my ratings.
And I can't rate it because I have not seen it. So
Okay, you have seen this one, Jim, because I know we talked about it.
we have.
Hellraiser Hellseeker, where we have Kirsty coming back.
Did we miss Hellworld?
No, I'm
Yeah,
in order.
Okay. So Hellseeker. Yes, this one I have seen.
Thanks for your update on your thoughts about it.
No, I didn't know that. You have to inform me that I go first this time, Mark.
Well, I
I
said
haven't gone first yet.
I said Jim. There's
So,
only
okay.
Jim on here.
Here's what I liked about this film. I thought that the change in Kirsty from being the heroine to being the manipulator of the entire movie was fantastic. I loved her character arc. The only thing that disappointed me about this is I thought it was a perfect setup for her to become a Pinhead type character, and she didn't. I thought that was a missed opportunity.
Robert?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. To me, the film seemed kind of thrown together. It didn't seem like they even thought it through fully. It lacked that quality of a Hellraiser movie that just makes you scared.
Right.
You know, even the ones that weren't good kind of scared you a little. This one, it just didn't.
It didn't, but they sort of make her the moral judge rather than Pinhead, because all he's doing is bargaining with her, which was again a weird turn for him because he doesn't bargain in any of the previous movies. But I still thought the thing that I enjoyed the most about it was the turn in the Kirsty character and what she would have evolved into given her experiences in the first two.
Yeah, I agree. It was a missed opportunity on that.
Yep.
So I've only seen this once, and the only reason I want to watch it maybe again for curiosity's sake is because the main guy in it is a guy with Allstate ads, right?
Dean Winter, who was even better in the Oz series, by the way.
I remember not liking this at all for the same reason you both seem to like it. I don't like what they did with Kirsty's character. I think it's the same if Nancy was teaming up with Freddy or Laurie Strode was teaming up with Michael Myers. I think that is the worst change in a character that I can think of.
I disagree, but that's normal for us, Mark.
And hey,
I just don't think it fits her character. I think it ruins.
Well, it doesn't fit your idea of who she would have become. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, just because her husband tried to kill her and was cheating on her, so she's going.
Would you not want some revenge? If your beautiful wife tried to kill you and was cheating on you?
I would divorce them and get them arrested.
But there's also something there for Kirsty where she felt like she could handle the Cenobites. Yeah. She's done it twice before.
Exactly. She thought she was on solid footing. She knew what to expect.
Yeah, no, didn't like it. But again, I've only watched it once, so I almost feel that I can't even give this one a rating because it would be unfair. I don't remember much about it apart from not liking it.
Yeah. Okay, so Robert, what would you rate this movie?
I'd probably right around the same as the last one, probably about 5.5. But again, I'm struggling to remember them just because I did only see them when they came out.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, this is not a perfect movie. I probably will give it a 5 out of 10. But like I said, I there are parts of it that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Okay, Hellraiser Deader.
I saw this once, and I honestly don't remember anything about it other than the fact that it had this weird. Isn't this the one with the weird green hue through a lot of it?
No, that's Hellworld.
Okay, So then I honestly don't remember anything about this film.
This is like a cult movie. It's like Cult of Pinhead.
Yeah, it wasn't it like the entire movie recorded in Prague. I'm
Right.
trying to remember it myself.
And a lot of these continue to be like shot in like cheap European movies.
Yeah, it was very very forgettable movie for me. Just I mean I don't even really remember much about it at all.
This one again, you could totally like see they have this script, and they're just like, "Can we throw Pinhead in here so we can keep the rights?" Sure, we'll just write it in a few scenes. I actually don't mind this one. Carrie Werr is good as the lead. It's an again, it would be a more interesting movie if Pinhead wasn't in it and it's not part of the Hellraiser franchise.
Is this the first one where Doug Bradley didn't play Pinhead, or is that the next one?
No, that's Revelations, and that's
Okay.
2 away from this one.
Okay.
But I will give this one. I will give this one like a 5.5 out of 10. I think it's
Well, that's pretty harsh for you, Mark.
no. I think it's a decent enough little movie. I think it's dragged down by the name of Hellraiser, and that they had to shoehorn Pinhead in to keep the rights. I think if you excise those parts of it and it was just a standalone movie, it would have been much better.
Yeah, it's hard for me to rate this one. I remember I didn't hate it,
Yeah.
but I don't remember liking it. So I judging by how I remembered it, I would say it was probably about a 4, probably right there with Hell on Earth. But my memory of it's so spotty.
I kind of have to rewatch this one. It's been a while since I've watched this one, but I remember.
And I generally like Carrie Werr, so I might have to check it out because I don't remember it at all if I have seen it.
Okay, now we're up to what I think is the second worst of the series. And this is the Lance Henriksen, Henry Cavill vehicle. Hellraiser, Hellworld.
Yeah, to me this one was the waste. It was. I thought it was so bad.
Yeah, and I feel the same way Mark felt about the last one. If they would have taken the Hellraiser name off of it, it probably would have been a solid premise. But
hang on, Jim. Let's take Henry Cavill out of it too.
Okay, I still say the same thing. It probably would have been a solid premise and a better film had they detached from the Hellraiser motif.
I think this one makes the least sense. Even like take the Hellraiser part out of it, the movie doesn't make any sense either.
Right.
It's just like I don't know who wrote this and what sort of meds they were taking, but they should have taken more because it made no sense.
Well, but how much of that ambiguity and that nonsensical,
it's not ambiguity. It's just.
No, but in the storyline itself, how much of it got convoluted because they were trying to attach it to Hellraiser?
Again, kind of like the last couple.
Right.
Pinhead's not in it that much, so I don't think it makes that much of a difference. So if you take out the Pinhead scenes and just watch that movie as it is,
yep,
it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's full of bland characters being stupid.
But if you take out the Pinhead scenes, it's basically just a murder movie. Lance Henriksen just kills these kids.
And I'm okay with that.
Well, he puts them and buries them, and it's all in their head. But
it would have made much more sense as a Pumpkinhead movie.
There you go. It could have been a Pumpkinhead sequel. These are the descendants of the people that hit his child.
Yes.
Of course, yeah. Doug Bradley was in Pumpkinhead too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I give Hellworld a 2.5 out of 10.
Holy shit! I think that's the worst rating I've ever heard him give.
Oh, you're going to hear a worse rating from me.
As we move down the line, huh?
Yeah.
I'd say this one's a 2.
Yeah, I agree.
And to me, it's the worst of them. So whichever one you think is worse, I think was better than this one.
Okay. 2011, the basically micro budget, desperately scrambling. We've got like 30 days to make a movie and get it edited and get it out there before we lose the rights to Hellraiser. Hellraiser Revelations.
Is this the one with the collector?
No. This is the
auditor,
first one without.
This is the one where the two guys go to Mexico to get drunk and screw women and stuff. And
so this is not one I've seen then. Okay, got it.
It was not good.
But here's my thing. At least it was a Hellraiser movie, right? This wasn't another script which they just put Pinhead into. They actually wrote it as a Hellraiser movie.
Yes.
And so it gets some points for that because at least it feels a bit more Hellraiser-y. Unlikable characters, badly shot. This is where we have a different actor playing Pinhead, which, you're... What can you do? You're an actor. You need to work. So good for him. But
and he didn't do a terrible job with it. It just wasn't. It wasn't our Pinhead,
Right.
I think he was. I think he was trying his best. Let's put it like that. But again, the whole movie's bad. So I mean, what have you got to work with, right? If the rest of the movie was excellent and he had a bad performance, you might be like, oh, okay, well, it's just a bad performance. But it's just a bad performance within a bad movie where everyone has a bad performance. But I still think it's better than Hellworld. So I will, and again, it got more of that Hellraiser feeling back. So I will give it a 4 out of 10.
I didn't hate it, but I still think that's a pretty generous rating. I think I'd probably go 3.
Yeah. And everything's kind of in relation to each other, right? So
yeah.
I mean, if I was to look at it in the grand scheme of movies overall that I've watched, it would probably be worse. But just in the overall Hellraiser franchise,
rating it as a Hellraiser movie, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So Jim, you didn't see that? Okay.
No.
Now we're moving on to what was pretty heavily marketed, and again, a new Pinhead, 2018's Hellraiser Judgment. Robert?
I actually enjoyed this one. I thought it was very dark, very disturbing, and really horrific. The storyline failed. The whole, angels coming into it and everything, none of that worked at all. But the overall feel, just watching those opening scenes for like the first half of the movie, you just felt dirty inside watching this movie, which isn't an altogether bad thing for a Hellraiser movie.
I did feel dirty watching this movie.
I did also.
It was for the level of disturbing that this movie was. I almost feel like nothing else in the Hellraiser series compares after the first one. With that being said, it wasn't a good movie.
So what's the rating?
I will tell you quite honestly, there's only one reason I watched this movie.
Heather Lang on.
100%. It's the only reason I put this movie on.
So hang on. So Robert, what's your rating of Hellraiser Judgment?
I think I'd give it a 4.
Okay. Jim?
2.
So you said you only watched it because of Heather Langenkamp's 2-second cameo.
Exactly. She has 2 lines in the movie and 1 scene.
So what do you rate it at 2?
She's the only one that gives it any points, yes.
So you didn't like anything else about it?
Nope, nothing.
So I give this one a 10 out of 10.
You are so full of shit, your eyes are brown.
No, this one to me is the absolute worst of the Hellraiser franchise. I give this 1 out of 10. I think this is they try and change the mythology. They make Pinhead this boring ass manager to the auditor who's doing the work. He's just bored, and it's like that short that what's his name made, Gary Tunnicliffe, where he played Pinhead. Where he's like Pinhead at the end of the world and he's bored because nobody's there, so he can't work for him. But in the end of that movie, and again, this is Gary Tunnicliffe, and like I don't want to rag on him too much. He loves Hellraiser, but I'm sorry, this is the worst of the fucking worst. The detectives are the stupidest pieces of shit I've ever seen in my life. This movie is so boring. An insomniac would enjoy it. Would get them right to sleep. Makes no sense. Crap. Even worse than Revelations, and that's saying something. I actively hated this movie.
That's kind of how I feel about Hellworld.
I mean, it's like which which turd is bigger? That's our opinion. I just hated everything about this movie. Finally, we have the Hellraiser remake / reboot.
Yep, this one I enjoyed. I thought it was a kind of a throwback to some of the kind of like the 5, 6, and 7 those movies that just they're good. They kind of have the Hellraiser feel somewhat, but not really a great movie. Just kind of it was a solid effort.
I'd have to. My biggest problem with this, other than the unlikable characters, right? Like I loved Goran Vincic as the quote unquote big bad in the film, where he was trying to become a Cenobite. I liked him. I did like the actress that played the female Pinhead,
Jamie Clayton.
Thank you, and that's it.
So let's just step back 1 second. So I do like that guy, whatever his name was that you said.
Vincic.
But think about what his plan was, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. And he's hiring this guy, right? And they must have met, right? Yep. And he's got this big machine like pulling his nerves out through his body. Like you can't tell me that you need money so much. You're going to meet this guy with all this going on, and you're going to drum up this weird, I'm going to lure my girlfriend here and hope all these weird events happen so we can eventually get back here, even though I was trying to tell you not to. I did like his performance. Anyway, Robert, what is your rating for the new Hellraiser movie?
I'd say it's probably a 5. It's hard. It's hard for me to give it too much hate.
It's a hard one for me to rate too.
I enjoyed it more than I had a Hellraiser in some time, so it gets extra points for that. If I was rating it just as a movie alone, it probably wouldn't be as high. But as a Hellraiser, it made me happy.
That was my other big problem with this, and I was talking to Robert about this earlier, is all of the Cenobites, with the exception of Jamie Clayton, felt like they were wearing rubber suits. Like whoever designed them had them so shiny and so glossy, and there was no organic feel to any of them for me.
So my problem with them is, and I understand the direction that they were going, right? So in the first one, they're all wearing kind of the leather sewn into their bodies, right? And they thought, okay, well, why don't we do something a little different? Why don't we just have their skin be folded up, right? And that's kind of what they're wearing. But to me, they all kind of look similar or the same. They didn't look. They all just kind of look bland to me. I'm like, none of those were like the Chatterer, like in the original. looks way better than the Chatterer in this one.
Right.
Yes.
And the other ones they just seem so ineffective.
Yeah.
And pointless. It would have been better if it was just Pinhead, and they weren't even there.
Right. Agreed.
So what's your rating, Jim?
I'd probably go 4.5 to a 5, maybe.
So this one's a hard one for me to rate because I think it falls into a lot of the tropes of badly or averagely written horror movies with unlikable characters doing dumb things, just a lot of happenstance. Hey, this is what needs to happen so we can move the plot along, but it didn't make a lot of sense. But I did like some of the aspects. I did like Goran's, is that his name? Performance.
Gordon did,
and I did like Jamie Clayton's performance. But I think this is most of all like a missed opportunity again, right? Because this is a big budget. Like the rest of the Hellraiser movies from, you can probably go back to part 3. As that's kind of the pinnacle of the amount of money spent on it. Not that a lot of money has to be spent on it. I would have preferred the money to be spent, get great writers in, or get great directors in, or, that sort of aspect of spending the money. You don't have the big flashy thing for Hellraiser.
So I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If when this movie was first rumored to be being made, it was being rumored as a total remake.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they would have been better off doing that?
No.
I agree.
No, because that would have alienated all of the core audience for this film.
So I remember back in the day, right? And Jim, what's my favorite horror movie?
Martyrs.
So I remember the director of Martyrs had been tagged to make the remake/reboot. I think that would have been a much better movie.
Yeah, agreed. Because it would have been much more brutal.
Yeah.
And he's got an eye for making things brutal but beautiful.
Right. Robert, have you seen Martyrs?
I don't think I have.
So it's a 2009 French movie.
I thought it was 2006.
Was it 6?
I think so.
Maybe that was a remake. Definitely check it out. It's my favorite horror movie, so I watched a billion horror movies.
He forced me to watch it, and I actually really enjoyed it.
All right, I'll check it out.
Yeah, don't read up anything about it because
go in blind, 100%.
Yeah, blind. And let us know what you think.
But it's got to be the French version.
Yes.
Okay.
So, as far as a straight remake, I mean, again, it's hindsight's 2020. I would say, probably it might have been better because I didn't really like this one. But maybe there's some aspects of this that they changed that I liked, right? I liked the way the box kept changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was one of the things I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's something different. It doesn't shit on the original. It's got a little bit of extra about it. The weight of expectation to the overall movie, because there was a lot of hype, and again, there's a lot of social media and everything else. And I would put this at I probably need to watch it again, a 6 or a 6.5, because I think the aspects that they got right, and the other aspects were just bland. So it could have been much worse, but it really, really could have been very much better.
Yeah, I was actually terrified that they were going to be making a remake.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh my god, I viewed it as it was going to be the same as the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which I know Jim, you said you enjoyed, right?
No, loved it, so loved it.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 for that one.
It's I hate remakes. I generally just hate them. I would rather I'd rather watch a French movie than an American remake. So
yeah, I mean there are some remakes which I think are better, but they're in the minority, right? Most of them are garbage.
And I gave Mark I sent Mark a link, and I don't know if he's watched it yet or not, to a new fan film that just dropped called Dylan's New Nightmare, which is a direct.
I watched like 15 minutes of it.
Yeah, it's a direct sequel to the Wes Craven's The New Nightmare. It's got the original actor that played Heather Langenkamp's son, Miko Hughes, in it, and I thought that was much better than the remake, even though it was only a 34-minute short. The actor that played Freddy Krueger, while it's clear that he's trying to imitate Robert Englund, I thought he did a really admirable job compared to what Jackie Earle Haley did.
I don't think that is Jackie Earle Haley's fault.
I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm not faulting the actor. The entire movie was shit.
Because like whenever I watch Watchmen, and obviously he plays Rorschach in it, I'm like, he would be great as Freddy. And they hired him. I'm like, okay, let's see what he does. They put him behind some of the most. I know they're trying to. Let's do more realistic burn victim makeup. Yeah. No, it didn't work. Sorry, and I couldn't fucking make a word out that he was saying.
Right.
The rest of the movie was just utter shit. Like, and this is a problem with like Hollywood remakes for most of the movies, right? Like here, the scene in the original that they recreated, where Freddy was coming out, from the wall, and in the original, it's just a plastic sheet with lighting underneath, and it looks great.
Right.
They do the same scene, but they're like, okay, well, this is a big budget movie. We're gonna have to CGI the shit out of this, and it looks utter shit. And it's like, how do you do the same exact effect, but make it like so much worse? And that's just a symptom of the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you said you think there are some remakes that are better.
Absolutely.
Name some of them.
I'm curious.
Okay, The Blob.
I can't speak to that because I haven't seen either the 50s version or the 80s version.
The 50s version was so good.
The which one?
The 50s version.
Yeah, the original.
It's boring. I don't like it at all.
Oh, I love that one. So I disagree on that one.
The Hills of Eyes.
All right, that one I could see.
Yeah, I could agree. I think the remake was fantastic personally.
I mean, and there's obviously talk about what's a remake and what's not. This probably shouldn't be put in this, but just for the sake of argument, The Thing is much better.
Kind of a sequel.
It's more of a accurate retelling of the book, right? So the first one kind of took some of the book, but the remakes, the John Carpenter one.
Another one was another John Carpenter. I thought Village of the Damned.
You thought the remake was better?
I did.
I haven't seen the original.
The original was just a straight up anti-communism movie, and it was terrible.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I will not. I am not afraid to admit that when Kirstie Alley sliced her own stomach open, I cried.
Well, you cried at anything.
I know.
Children of the Damned, right, based on what the Cuckoo's book. I remember liking the original, and I thought and John Carpenter is my favorite director.
The original, the kids weren't even that bad. They were just different.
Mm-hmm.
And they still blow them up. No.
I honestly think the John Carpenter movie is one of his weaker movies. It felt like a made-for-TV movie. But I would need to watch the original and his again.
I agree. It's one of John Carpenter's worst movies, but yeah, it's still better than the original.
What else?
Oh, here's one. Actually, and this is probably true, is The Good Son versus The Bad Seed. The Good Son was a lot more horrific than The Bad Seed was, for sure.
I don't remember The Bad Seed.
No,
It's
I haven't seen
essentially
it.
this
I'll be
lady
right back.
adopts. Yeah, it's essentially this lady adopts a daughter, and as she grows, she realizes there's something not quite right, and she finds out that the child's father was a serial killer.
Mm.
So it brings up the whole nature versus nurture thing. And whereas The Good Son, which is essentially the same movie, where the mom finds out that her son is this psychopath serial killer in training, it it's a lot more emotional in The Good Son than it is in The Bad Seed. But I love both films.
Uh, another one I would say is Juan and The Grudge.
Yeah,
I think The Grudge was better.
I disagree.
Really?
And I saw The Grudge first before I saw Ju-on. I like that I was utterly confused and terrified the first time I watched Ju-on because I had trouble keeping up with the separate storylines. And that, to me, made for a more uncomfortable and more terrifying experience than the straight run of The Grudge.
Interesting. To me, I thought The Grudge was a great movie.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I don't disagree.
I thought Ju-on was just a sloppy, pieced together, rambling thing. It didn't work for me.
So let me ask you, what do you think of The Grudge versus The Ring, or Kiyako versus? Oh my God, I can never pronounce her name.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched it all the way through. Put it on, and I got about 20 minutes into it and had to go do something else and never came back to it.
It's hysterical. It is probably the funniest horror movie I've seen in a very long time.
The whole one villain versus another, has it ever really worked well?
Well, I can tell you it did not work well in Freddy versus Jason for me.
No.
I thought it was garbage. The best part of that movie was me and the guy sitting behind me quoting the Dark Knight, or not the Dark Knight, but the Black Knight and King Arthur from Monty Python, while Freddy and Jason were fighting. That was the most. But on the other side of that, that is the last movie I saw in theaters where I really felt the audience excitement for a film.
Yeah.
And I missed that. That part of it I really enjoyed.
I'm back.
We figured as much. We just kept going without you.
So just to talk about remakes, I think there's some remakes which make good companion pieces to the original.
Such as
Suspiria.
Ick.
Sure.
Maniac.
I haven't seen either one, so I can't speak to those.
No, I shouldn't say this because the original is a classic. But I didn't even mind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first remake.
I hated it.
I don't think it just wasn't terrible, so I probably liked it. This isn't terrible.
I'll tell you my big problem with that film, the first remake, was the performances. Because in the scene where the guy kills himself in the van, right? Mm-hmm. You see Jessica Biel scream in the initial shock. The camera pans to show the other people in the van. It comes back, and it now looks like somebody has slapped her across the face. Like she is shaking. She is full on bawling her eyes out. And you see that through the entire movie with her reactions.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
But the major plus for the first two, like the remake and the sequel to the remake, is Arlie Ermering, who played the drill sergeant, obviously famously in Full Metal Jacket, and he's always amazing.
Yeah, he is. I agree with that. I will say probably my favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Mark, is The New Generation.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
The first one is head and shoulders above any of the other ones.
I do agree.
That's good to hear because that's the only one I've seen.
So Mark and I are in disagreement about the latest installment, where I thought they did an admirable job.
I think it's the worst piece of shit I've ever seen in my life.
I think it's total fan service, and I loved all of it.
Yeah, you can all have your jerk fan service, but unless you make a good movie, I don't care how many Easter eggs or whatever you put into it.
That's your big problem with everything is Easter eggs.
No, No.
What do you have against bunnies, sir?
I saw the first one, and I really disliked it. And this was back back in the '80s when I was still a teenager and loved blood and guts and gore. And everyone's like, "Oh, well, you should see the rest of them." And I was just like, "No,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm good."
and Toby Hooper was trying to get like a PG release for the first one, right?
Did he really?
Yeah, because I mean, it's the same as Halloween, except there's not even boobs in it. I mean, the gore there's not a lot of blood in that movie at all. It's all, in your imagination.
So I will tell you the one thing that frightened me the most was when I found out who the narrator of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was, because I liked him so much from his other work that I was like, God, that's really creepy as shit.
Yeah, it's some American dude that I don't know.
It's John Larroquette from Night Court.
Yeah, never seen it. So anyway. So Robert, you had another question, and it's like, why do we like horror movies?
Oh yeah, what it does to our psyche and all that. Yeah, that was one of the topics I threw out there. We can get into that, sure.
Well, I think it's escapism at its best, isn't it?
Somewhat. I think it's also. I think it kind of goes down to a more simplistic, natural thing where it's. I think in a lot of ways you're putting yourself in the role of the characters, and it is in many ways it's kind of like the baby deers jumping at each other to try to startle one another. It's you're living out that risk and what you would do.
Is that it, or is it more of a Schadenfreude thing where, thank God it's not me?
I think there's certainly aspects of all of it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
That's true because it's so subjective, right? I mean, it's art,
and it changes from movie to movie.
Yeah.
Some movies you watch it just to see some teenagers get massacred.
Right.
Yeah.
Most movies as I get older.
Yeah, sure.
So I've thought about this question, right? And I'm like, my three movies which influenced my love of horror growing up were Jaws, An American Werewolf in London, and Poltergeist, right? Whenever I was a kid. But looking back and thinking, I've watched so many fucking horror movies. Like, what is it about horror movies? Which it's the first thing that I look for, right? If I'm going through my streaming service, I'll go to the horror section, always first.
Right.
And I don't really know. That's the funny thing about it. And I'm kind of the pragmatic sort of person. Like, I haven't been quote unquote scared of a movie since I was maybe like 10 or 12. Mm-hmm. Because in my head, it's like, these are all actors. This is just a movie. It's not real. So, like, I don't get scared. Like, if I'm going to be scared, I'll turn on the news or watch a documentary or read on history or something.
I'm just the opposite. The movies scare me. They scare me good.
I'm so jealous because I would love to have that interaction, right, with them. But I obviously like them for some other reason than being scared, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And I've watched everything from PG horror to real obscure, extreme splatter, gore, torture, like the whole gambit, right? And
the suspension of disbelief for me is the crucial aspect for a horror movie. And if that fails for me, then I don't enjoy it.
Right.
But that suspension of disbelief, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yet I put off watching Dr. Sleep for years because I knew how bad it was going to scare me. I had to be in the right mental state to watch that movie.
Really?
I read the book first.
Well, and to be fair, the book is awesome. I did. That is that book was a perfect sequel to The Shining, I think.
Yeah. Strangely enough, I didn't like the book that much. And I think partly because I read it in the same month that I read Nosferatu.
Oh, yeah.
The NOS4A2.
Yeah, Joe Hill. Yep.
Yeah. And they're parallel novels. They even reference each other's villains.
Yep.
And I thought that one was just better. I thought the characters were better. The storyline was better. But I still haven't gotten to that, watching the AMC show of that one, because it scared me so much.
So I started watching the show. I hadn't read the book yet, and it was fantastic. The show is done really, really well. It's super dark, and Zachary Quinto plays a great villain.
Sorry, Jim. Just real quick, and you can go. Robert, do you get scared by books?
Oh yeah. Very much so.
I think I just lack imagination, or I'm just so pragmatic that it just doesn't even touch me.
And books will creep me out more than a movie will, because I can picture it in my head more than seeing it on the screen. Because there's that plastic screen in between us. That for me is like my security blanket.
It's a different type of fear for me, though.
Yeah.
When I watch a movie, I'm scared in the moment.
Yeah.
And the instant that movie's over, I'm no longer scared.
Right.
A book will scare me, and I will continue being scared by that book for years afterwards.
Right.
I mean, I'm still not entirely over reading The Shining back in like 1990.
Right.
You know, still, when I walk into the bathroom, sometimes I'm scared that lady's coming out of that tub.
God, Jim, imagine if you wrote your memoir and then Robert had to read it. That he would be scarred for life.
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so.
You've had things go on in your life.
Yeah, see, Mark likes to bust my chops that I saw the movie The Entity when I was 8 or 9 years old, or that I saw The Exorcist at 7.
No, it's not that.
Oh, what is it then, Mark?
Let's talk about your movie experience, your movie theater experience.
Oh, God, that's a totally different experience and not at all related.
This would be your memoirs, though.
It would be. So Mark is referring to the time between when I was 7 and probably 12, the very few times that I ever went to a movie theater by myself. And the reason I didn't from 12 until this year.
What happened?
It's a cliffhanger for you.
Every time I was at the theater by myself, there was a man pleasuring himself in the seat next to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would traumatize me.
I just didn't do it. I would never go by myself.
So I kind of take it back as far as being scared about a movie. No. Since I was 12, a recent movie scared me just because I hate heights and I couldn't screen, and it was Fall.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I have not either.
So Fall is, and I love. Jim knows I love this little subgenre of people being stuck in a location and not knowing how to get out of it. So it's really the story about these two girls who go to scale this radio tower that's like 1,000,000 miles in the air. I don't know how it feels like 1,000,000 miles in the air, but it's probably like whatever. But it's shot in a way they get up to a certain point, and the ladder to get down falls off, and they're just like stuck up at the top of this radio tower. But like the climb up, and they're looking down, and it's just like sometimes I torture myself by watching, on YouTube or whatever, especially like Russian people seem to do this a lot. Climb to the top of the highest, hold off the edge and stuff. Like that just makes my stomach turn.
Do you know what movie just terrified me? Was Free Solo. In that aspect. Have you seen that one?
The mountain climbing one?
Yeah, where the guy does the free solo up El Capitan. It's a documentary.
Yeah, what's one I watched recently? I have to tell you what I watched.
Just talking about that movie, my palms have started sweating.
I watched. Where is it? I watched a recent documentary about that. keep on talking while I look for it.
Yeah, that movie was terrifying though. I mean, it's a documentary. You know he lives.
Right.
Right from the get-go, you know he lives. But at the same time, he's sitting there. It's like, oh, one of his friends just was doing a free solo climb and fell to his death. And he's sitting there, the main character sitting there talking to his fiance.
Right.
He's like, I don't know what she's so upset for. What did she expect was going to happen?
Okay,
And she's like, oh my God.
Robert, it's a 2019 documentary called Fine Lines about people who do that kind of free climbing or just really risky climbing. So I have to watch it if it's going to make me feel ill.
Yeah.
But I was telling Jim about it, and it's like I kind of get sick of those documentaries about these people that do this sort of thing because they all become philosophers about life and death. It's like,
yeah.
Oh my God. So it's just one thing could happen, and then I go to my death, and oh my God, 12 of my friends died in the last 10 years doing the same thing that I'm doing. But, life is about risk and I don't give a shit about your fucking bullshit philosophy. Yeah, I get it. We're all going to die, but I'm not going to put myself 5,000 feet up on a fucking mountain just to get that thrill of, I will go on. So yeah, I don't know why I got into horror. It doesn't have that visceral effect, Robert. Again, I'm very jealous of people who get scared or terrified of movies because I would love that adrenaline rush. But I really can't put my finger on why I keep going back to that well over and over again.
And I'm the exact opposite. I can tell you exactly what started my love for horror, but I don't know. I mean, I can't explain why I still enjoy it, except slasher films for whatever reason give me an adrenaline rush. I get really into them, whether I'm rooting for the killer or the.
It's all the boobs, Jim.
What?
It's all the tits.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'm a total TNA guy. Totally.
Jim is actually a closeted heterosexual.
Ah. I think my ex-wife would disagree.
What was his name?
But anyway, so my love for horror started with my mother because I would be shut up, Mark.
Sigmund Freud, get in here.
Right, so that was we would sit down at night because my sister didn't like horror movies and my mother did. So we would sit down at night and that would be our quality time. We'd watch scary movies together. We'd make popcorn. We'd sit downstairs. We'd play video games until they, Pac-Man on my Atari 2600 until Tales from the Dark Side or Tales from the Crypt came on, and that's what started my love of the genre.
Robert, do you have any kids or nieces, nephews?
I do. I have a daughter.
Okay. How old is she?
13.
Okay. So, you know about the Entity, right? The movie with Barbara.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim, how old were you when you and your mom sat on the couch together and she said, "Hey, Jim, come over. Let's watch a movie together. Let's watch Barbara Hershey be raped by a ghost."
She never brought up the rape. And as much as you hate to admit it, Mark, at the age when I watched it, I never understood that was happening.
What age were you?
I was between 8 and 9.
So, Robert, would you let your, picture your daughter was 8 or 9, watch The Entity? Would you call her over?
No, probably, maybe. I don't know. Around that age, I watched.
Let's ask a more relevant question.
I watched Blair Witch with her around that age.
Yeah, there's no ghost rape in that, though.
So
there's no ghost rape in it.
Let's bring this back and make it more relevant, shall we? Robert, your parents at your daughter's age, would they have allowed you to watch that movie?
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have stopped me.
See, thank you very much.
I don't
Mark.
think they would have invited me to watch it, but yeah, they probably wouldn't have stopped.
Right, you wouldn't have been sharing some popcorn while
it was around that age that I first watched Hellraiser.
Right,
all the way back to Hellraiser.
And I think I was in 4th or 5th grade the first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, about the same for me.
Yeah.
But having a daughter and watching horror movies with her is very, very interesting, because I think that's where you really get to know why we watch horror movies. You know, she has some of those impulsive reactions of "Don't go in there!"
Right.
She's screaming it to the character. It's like she is putting herself into that role.
Yep.
She is that character in her head at that moment, and she is thinking about what would she do in that situation.
Right.
And that is where I think we are watching these movies and learning about ourselves and learning what we would do in drastic situations.
Yep.
I think that it's somewhat lazy. Okay, because horror is seen as like a really kind of dumbed down genre for the most part, and it's cheap to make, and it gets butts in seats, right, for like the gruesome kills and whatever. So I think it's almost designed to have dumb characters do dumb things, just so we as an audience can watch them get killed and go, haha, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, and that's certainly part of it. Is you put yourself in those situations and you see, oh, if I were that stupid, that's what would happen to me.
Jim, I don't want to bring this up again because I talked about it last week, but I'm going to anyway. Just because it made me laugh so much. So I will get on to kind of what we've watched recently. I watched Open Water 3, Cage Dive, and I swear I was almost on the floor laughing, right? I'm watching it while I'm working because I work from home for most of the week. And it's just on there. And it's just like the three douchiest characters you could ever meet, right? And they're the ones stuck out in the open water. But they find this life raft because they were on this boat, which overturned. And they're like, thank God, because we'd be in the water and like sharks have been bumping our feet. And oh my God. I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel that relief too because I don't like this situation. But then there's like, they see something out in the distance. It's at night. And they see there's been another survivor, this woman who's unconscious, but she's on like some floating thing. So they grab her and pull her into the life raft. And they're all like, are you okay? And she's like unconscious, like, okay. Is she alive? Yeah, she's alive. Yeah. Okay. And they're all like, oh, we have to warm her up. So they're all rubbing her, and they're like, she's really cold. And one of the characters is like, I'm going to light a flare. And the other two characters are like, you're going to set this place on fire. What the fuck are you doing? So, they have to wrestle about it. So obviously the flare goes off. And so the whole thing ignites. And those survivors just jump off the side and they're like watching in the middle of the night. This life raft just like light on fire. And you can just hear the woman that they pulled in was unconscious, burning alive and screaming. And they're all like, oh my God. I'm like, you are the dumbest fucking people I have ever fucking seen in a horror movie in my life. You just pulled this poor woman who might have just simply passed away with hypothermia, like in her sleep. But you put her in a fucking pyre, lit her on fire, and she's screaming in agony. And they're all just like, not only have we just brutally barbecued this woman, but now we don't have a life raft anymore, and we're going to get eaten by sharks. Anyway, that made me laugh.
So, Mark, should we go into what we've watched?
Yeah.
I know you have some stuff left over from the last time we recorded. I don't have anything new other than The Exorcist II, The Heretic, which we already talked about.
What was your favorite part of The Exorcist II?
Seeing James Earl Jones dressed up as a giant cicada.
How could there be any other answer?
Jim,
right, exactly.
Cicada.
What?
He was a locust.
Locust, whatever.
Cicada.
It's a large grasshopper, for fuck's sake. But anyway, that was my favorite part of the whole movie.
There's just so many parts of that movie which are just absolute fucking gold. like whenever they're doing that weird hypnotist thing, do, 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 and you've got this weird like character that's dressed up as Reagan, like pushing on her heart.
Yep.
It's just like,
I remembered that scene from the first time I had seen the movie, but I couldn't remember where in the film it was.
right.
And then I watched it, and I'm like, oh, that makes more sense than what I remember.
Richard Burton having to run on broken glass was pretty funny.
Yeah.
The whole tap dancing thing, like Linda Blair, she was probably 18 or 17 in that movie. And she's like,
do you know how old her character is supposed to be though? In the original treatment for the
I don't
film,
know, 3,
12.
But she's in there. She's in that. Hey, I used to be possessed by a demon. Oh, don't be scared. I'm not possessed.
Got better.
Like, who the fuck wrote this? Anyway.
Yeah.
So, Robert, we usually do this thing at the end to talk about anything recently that we've watched or read or played video games or anything. So, do you want to let us know what you've watched, read?
Sure. So, like I said, I've had COVID for the last 2 weeks, so I've watched more TV in the last 2 weeks, and I've just kind of caught up on just so much stuff that I hadn't seen. Horror wise, I finally, I mentioned I took me forever to watch Dr. Sleep. That's the one I watched.
And what did you think?
I really enjoyed it.
Did you?
I really enjoyed it. I did. I thought it was an excellent movie. I thought the movie was better than the book, surprisingly.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you.
I thought the movie was better than The Shining.
That I didn't. I wouldn't go so
You're
far.
both so wrong.
I think The Shining is a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie.
So
I thought it was a great movie.
I'll tell you what I thought of Dr. Sleep. I thought Rose the Hat was miscast.
I really like.
I don't think she has the powerful presence that she should have to be the terrifying character she was in the book. I thought that they made what Abra was too old, and
Yes,
in the movie
I'd agree with that.
they used the ending of the book The Shining rather than the ending from the book Dr. Sleep, and that annoyed the shit out of me.
I thought the Shining movie was just as good as the Shining book.
Yep.
I disagree.
Okay, so are we talking about the movie with Jack Nicholson, or are we talking about the 90s movie with
the movie with Jack Nicholson?
Okay.
I
disagree.
actually hated the 90s version.
I did too.
So the book itself, I think, is just okay. I don't think it's anything spectacular. But I thought the movie, although beautifully shot, obviously, I thought Jack Nicholson was obviously insane from the first time that you saw him. And I think that detracted from the character arc of him going insane.
Well, of course he's insane. He's a recovering alcoholic that likes to beat his
he is obviously nuts from that first scene.
And I think that's a difference of medium. I don't think you could have a movie where you didn't know Jack Nicholson was insane. Partly because it's Jack Nicholson,
right?
And partly because just how the movie is. With the marketing of the movie, everyone's going to know what that's about.
So I kind of get it. It's like casting. I think it's a little unfair on Jack Nicholson because I think we look at Jack Nicholson now as kind of like Nicolas Cage now, right? That's the persona. I think Jack Nicholson could have dialed it back. And maybe it was a director's choice to have him kind of like out there Looney Tunes already.
Yeah.
But maybe it was an acting choice. But I think they could have dialed that back. And it would have made
then you have to cast someone different. You can't have Jack Nicholson.
Maybe.
With One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Easy Rider, his roles in both of those, Jack Nicholson's a crazy guy. he was typecast from early on as the crazy guy.
Yeah.
I think the big turn for Jack Nicholson was doing comedy in Witches of Eastwick and then being a romantic lead in As Good as It Gets.
Yeah, but even those
were
he was
the
still the
outliers.
crazy guy.
Right, but those were the outliers in his career.
Well, he's always been quirky, right?
Yeah.
And usually, I mean, I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a performance which makes a lot of sense for him as a character, if that's the only thing that he can do. But I think for The Shining, it would have been more interesting if he was a little dialed back and What's-Her-Face was a little bit more stable.
Wendy, Shelley Long.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall. But obviously, she was driven mad by what she had to do hundreds and hundreds of times for every scene. Whatever.
Yep.
I thought The Shining was brilliant. And I actually, I thought Doctor Sleep was the perfect sequel to it. I think if you would have tried to do it, I think for the movie as well.
I disagree. I did feel a lot like the movie PG-13 to the book. Like I really would have loved to see the scene from the book where he wakes up or he starts having the nightmare about the dead baby.
I haven't read the book, but there was definitely that one scene where they're torturing that kid.
So much more horrific in the book.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't read the book, but I would say that they didn't. Well, maybe they did.
They did. They absolutely PG-13'd it.
But so what happens in the book? I'm just curious to that kid. Like, does he just graphically describe how they cut him up, or do they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so what they're doing in it is they're sucking out their life essence.
Right.
And they're only going after people that shine.
Right. No, I know.
So yes, they brutalize his body after they have stolen all of his essentially his life essence. Sort of like the podlings from
I thought the concept was the more he's afraid, the more of that essence they get out of him, or the more
the better it tastes.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
The more pain he has, the better it is for them.
So they just brutalize the shit out of him.
But what do they do in the book that's not in the movie?
Oh, I'd have to look it up. I don't remember the scene word for word, but it's a very brutal scene. They torture that kid.
It is the reason why, even though I knew I was going to love the movie, I didn't watch it for so long.
Right.
It's because I didn't want to put myself through that.
Yep.
And eventually I did.
I actually thought, for a mainstream movie, it's kind of like The End of the Mist. They're actually doing something a bit more extreme. I like that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great movie.
I should see if I could gift you my audiobook, Mark.
Okay.
One thing I actually liked that they used the end of the Shining for the end of Doctor Sleep with the burning down and everything, because so many more people who are watching Doctor Sleep were more familiar with the Shining movie than they were with the Shining book.
Was Dr. Sleep Mike Flanagan?
It might have been. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
But that's the whole movie I watched. That and Hellraiser. I rewatched Hellraiser. And I rewatched Hellraiser also to get a new perspective from it with my 13-year-old daughter.
Okay.
Now you have to show her From Beyond. It doesn't have to be just horror. If there's anything else that you've watched or seen or whatever, it's just
I read about 3 books a week, so I'm always pounding through books. So I don't even know where to start there. None of which have been really all that great or horrific. Last great book I read. Do you guys dig fantasy?
Jim does.
I read Joe Abercrombie's The Heroes, and
don't
I
know
thought
that
it was the best fantasy book I've ever read. It was so good, and it was everything I've always wanted from Lord of the Rings and never got. Where Lord of the Rings, you have 8 pages describing a cliff face, and then the Battle of Helm's Deep happens, and it's 2 pages.
Right.
Yeah, no, the Heroes is one entire book, monstrous book, like 800 pages of one single battle in an epic war. And not even one battle, one skirmish in the battle.
Wow.
So it's done so well. You love and hate every character in it, and it is just so in depth. Yeah, it was one of the best books I've read in a long time. But I will warn you, it's like book number 5 in the series. So you got to go through the others to get there. But yeah, it was outstanding. And Joe Abercrombie's so good. He's so good at writing villains that you love and heroes that you hate.
See, I have a problem. So I just read this book, and we talked about this already, Mark. I read these 2 books. One was called Scratches, and one is called Severed. And Severed is actually a prequel to the book Scratches, and it makes you empathetic to the villain from Scratches. And I hated the author for that.
Really?
Yeah, I did. Actually, no, we didn't talk about it, Mark, because we're supposed to have him on. So I held those 2 back.
Okay. Thanks for the update. I think that's an interesting choice, though. I don't know if that would automatically make me dislike something.
No, I'm not. Oh, so I say hate the author, as an over exaggeration. I loved both books, but I don't need to feel empathy for a villain. I like sometimes just not liking a character.
Yeah, it just depends how it's done. Sometimes,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and Joe Abercrombie's, it's kind of like a Game of Thrones type thing where you like them and hate them all at the same time. You like certain aspects of them. You can even sympathize with where they are in their life to do some of the things they do.
Yep.
But you still hate what they do.
Right.
And so it's a fantasy book, so it's a lot of it's war, and you come to terms with, in war, people do shit they don't even want to do sometimes.
Right. So when Mark says that I like fantasy, what he's generally referring to, Robert, is I like urban fantasy stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the genre that I delve into when I want something more lighthearted. The epic fantasy, I'm taking my first foray in October. My favorite author, David R. Slayton, who Mark and I have talked to, is releasing a new book called Dark Moon, Shallow Sea. So I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
And Robert, can you please not bring up Game of Thrones, because I'm getting PTSD from those last 3 seasons.
Oh, you shouldn't watch those. I didn't watch them. So as soon as I knew it was going beyond where the books went, I went, this is not where it should be going.
I think they left the books after season 3, but the last few seasons they just shit the bed so bad.
They did.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of those. I backed off on it. And went, you know what? I'm just going to read the books and enjoy those.
I stuck it out through the whole run. Not gonna lie, I was there for the whole thing.
I mentioned this to Jim. I watch about 3 hours of TV a month in general.
Yeah.
So for me to stick out a show when I fear it's not going to go well.
I barely watch any TV, and Jim knows TV series. It's very few and far between for me.
Yeah, so it actually is a very big deal for me to have watched all of the Hellraiser movies. Because, I can't think of another movie series that I've seen them all. Except for I guess I've seen all the Star Wars movies. I haven't seen any of the TV shows.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else, Robert? As far as you watched, seen, read?
Yeah,
Okay, your turn, Mark. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Robert.
No, you're good.
Okay. So I talked about the Imitation Game. Jim? Did I bring up Beyond the Door on our last episode?
Doesn't sound familiar, so I don't think so.
So talking about The Exorcist, Beyond the Door is a 1974 Italian ripoff of The Exorcist, which Warner Brothers sued their ass off. But really, this movie is more of a Rosemary's Baby meets The Exorcist. And this is fine Italian ripoff fun. The lead guy looks like Dean Stockwell from the Dunwich Horror.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've seen
Quantum Leap. Most people would know him from Quantum Leap, Mark.
Right, but he looks like in the Dunwich Horror. He had like afro and the mustache.
Yep.
And that's what the main guy looks like. And the main woman, who's a British actress, she really, really looks like Kirsten Dunst in a lot of the scenes. It's really weird. But anyway, this is just a fun, obviously, knockoff of both of those movies. Beyond the Door, yeah. Then I watched 2023's The Price We Pay, which was just a random watch. From the guy, the director who made, what do you call the Clive Barker Midnight Meat Train? Midnight Meat Train.
Yeah.
And Versus, the Japanese director. This one was pretty fucking bad. It actually had some pretty big name actors. Emil Hirsch, Stephen Dorff were in it. Basic premise. There's a woman who's going to a pawn store, and she's got some sort of backstory with the guy that owns the pawn store where she owes money, and he's trying to be all creepy and like, hey, you know, if you want some money, what are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And then there's a robbery at the pawn store. They take her hostage, drive away from the cops, everything else. They're hiding out in this remote farm. The farm ends up to have like some crazy guy who's harvesting people for certain things. And it's kind of like a Saw thing. But this is just as bland as you can get. The setup wasn't too bad, but once we get into the kind of the meat of the action, it was just blah. Like, none of this makes any sense. Like, they cut a guy, they cut a guy open, like, down, like, from his, like, torso, and then he's up punching people and stuff. I'm like, no, you wouldn't be doing that. You would be in the floor. You'd be dead right now. So that wasn't very good. I watched 1980's The Unseen, where a trio of female reporters find themselves staying overnight in a house occupied by a hostile being lurking in the basement. Mm. And this kind of had like Castle Freak vibes, even though it's obviously before it. It was fun enough. They did some. As far as like a narration dump, they did it in a certain scene in a certain way, which I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. But you know, you've got these weird couple who own the house. Some things in the basement. What is it? Da da da. It was all right. It was like a 5 out of 10. Then I watched 1998's Bone Daddy.
What?
Bone Daddy. Jamie, has anybody ever called you that?
I think I've seen that movie, but it's probably not the same one, Mark.
So this is with Rutger Hauer. Yeah. Rutger Hauer is a author who used to be a coroner, and he's writing a book about a serial killer who made a series of murders but then disappeared. But he decides to then write a book, like a fictional book, but about those real killings and have an ending to it. And then the killings start again. This is very much a post-7, post-Bone Collector, right? Remember there's a slew of those movies after 7, which were like the detective serial killer, copycat, things like that. And this was a dud for me, unfortunately. And I love Rutger Hauer, but this movie made 0 sense. Like, I know you were a coroner, like for like the state or whatever, but you're an author now, and you don't get to be somebody who consults with the lead detective and drives around every crime scene. That's not how life works. But over and above that, yeah, not good.
They clearly have not learned from that mistake, Mark, because podcasters get access to evidence in Halloween 2018.
Well, that is true. I look forward to getting evidence for future podcasts. I look forward to going to a serial killer who is on the roof of a building, who is chained up, and bringing a mask out and like saying, "Oh, look at your mask! Look at your mask! Isn't this great writing? We're podcasters. We can do whatever we want." Podcasters is basically you can do anything you want.
So Mark's in it for the power, Robert. Just in case
I can see that. Yeah.
Ultimate.
I think I'm going to start my own podcast now.
It's like One Punch Man, but it's one podcast, man. You can do whatever you want.
But Mark, you've got 2 podcasts.
Oh, that's true. I've got double the power.
Yeah.
I am unstoppable.
Yeah, I am Godzilla.
Gojira.
So the last one that I watched was 2020's Sea Fever, which was an Irish movie, where there is a researcher who's out on a fishing trawler, and something attaches to the fishing trawler, and then something gets aboard. This is very much like definite vibes of The Thing, Aliens. There's no one actual monster, but it's something that's infecting them. I really, really enjoyed this. I thought this was a real fun throwback to those movies. There's certain scenes where you're like, oh yeah, that's from Alien. But it's done in such a way, and we have the protagonist, which is a female researcher, who initially, when she goes aboard, like the crew's like, for fuck's sake. And she's like, what? And they're pointing at her because she has like ginger hair, and that's unlucky, right? Apparently. And then things start to happen as they go through, but she ends up being the one that stands up and does the right thing, even though she's very insular and very awkward in general. I really recommend this one. I think it's a lot of fun.
You have to text me that name, Mark, so I don't forget.
Sea Fever. Sea Fever. It's a fever. It's a fever. And apart from that, I'm still reading SPQR by Mary Beard about ancient Rome. I think that's it.
Okay. I don't have any updates, so that's it for me. Robert, is there anything you want to talk about? Anything you have coming up?
No, not really. No, I'm working on my next book, and I'm hoping to have it out probably within a year. So
why don't you pop off a few names of your books for our listeners in case they're interested?
Sure. So my books, Death's Disciples was my first book, and it's kind of I mentioned it was heavily influenced by Damnation Game by Clive Barker. It's a rather gruesome little story. But then after that, my next book was actually a children's book, a children's horror book called The Vegetarian Werewolf and Other Stories. That one is actually now out of print. The publisher went out of business, and I haven't found a new publisher for it just yet. But if you can find a copy out there, I think it's a lot of fun for kids. And then I got my political horror comedy, which is There Are No Zombies in America.
I have that one written down. I'll be
So,
looking for that one.
I think it's pretty funny and pretty horrific too. And in hindsight, I got too much of it right.
Is it more horrific than real life right now?
No,
exactly. I don't think so.
Well, maybe. 'Cause I do mention that it's during Trump's second term, so it might be.
Oh,
Well, maybe. Dun, dun, dun.
dun, dun, dun. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thank
that's
you
it for
guys
us,
for
guys.
having me.
Robert,
Yeah.
anytime. Thank you for coming on. You're welcome back anytime you'd like to come back. You just let us know.
I might take you
Glad
up
to
on
have
that.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. This was a
And
lot of
because
fun.
you have a number of other topics which we didn't get into, so
Sure.
welcome back
Yeah.
anytime, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Robert. Appreciate it.